The Honourable Rosie Sahana.
Hi, I'd like to take this opportunity to respond to misinformation that has been spread through the media recently in relation to the implementation of the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act and its consultation process. As you may be aware, the members of my team and the members of my colleagues here are aware that I have been involved with the consultation for this Act and its legislation. Yeah, and I'm very passionate about, as I've stated in my inaugural speech, that I'm very passionate about Aboriginal affairs, and this is just one of many issues. For me, on a personal note, it's been a privilege for me to be working alongside a great team from the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, representing the Minister Tony Budi. I've been closely following the process of this legislative reform, and I have been involved in all three co-designs that was facilitated in 2022 and the education sessions that are still being conducted throughout the state. I'd like to point out, comments made by the Honourable Neil Thompson. He has provided a lot of commentary on the Act and its consultation process in the media and on social media, and I would like to respond to some of these comments to provide some actual clarity. I'll start with his remarks on the consultation process that was undertaken in the forming of this legislation, and his statement that, quote, that many in the community have not been aware of the changes, unquote. In a recent media interview, he stated, quote, never before in the history of WA has so little thought been put in place for a new regulatory framework, unquote. For me, it is very interesting to hear this, given that the consultation for this legislative reform has been ongoing for 5 years, 5 long years. There are 3 phases of formal consultation undertaken throughout WA between 2018 and 2020 for the reform of the 1972 Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act. And there were 175 workshops held throughout these phases. The 3-phase co-design process that was implemented last year included 94 co-design workshops with more than 1,100 attendees held across the state. I would ask the Honourable Neil Thompson how many of these 94 workshops he attended. I don't recall seeing him at any one of them. I personally attended 28 of those workshops in the Kimberley, Pilbara and Perth, and I listened to feedback from Aboriginal people, traditional owners, pastoralists, developers, local government representatives, industry representatives, and community members. I also saw firsthand the changes that were made to the co-design documents between each phase as a result of the more than 200 individual submissions received by the DPLH office as a result of the co-design sessions. So this new Act, as stated before, is the culmination of 5 years of community consultation. Yet in a recent media statement, the Honourable Neil Thompson claims, quote, the government has done a terrible job of ensuring that communities are informed, unquote. And he indicates he believes the co-design process has failed. The consultation has been happening for 5 years. 5 years. Where have you been, Honourable Neil Thompson? Sleeping under a rock? The train left the station 5 years ago, and guess what? You wasn't on it.
Still not.
To the best of my knowledge, the Honourable Member did not attend any of the consultation process over the last 5 years, but now is choosing to politicized the reform by posting on social media and speaking to the media about the legislation he does not understand.
He doesn't understand much.
Honourable Neil Thompson will no doubt talk about his attendance of one education session in in Kalgoorlie last week. A session I also personally attended with my colleague, the Honourable Kyle McGinn. The Honourable Member must not have been listening too closely during the sessions, as he was too busy posting on his social media page and misconstruing what was actually occurring at the meeting. He states, quote, "A fundamental change has not been properly explained to the community in that after July 1, there will be no assessment of Aboriginal cultural heritage by a government committee," unquote. The whole basis of this legislative reform is that instead of a government committee deciding what is or isn't Aboriginal cultural heritage, the new Act will ensure Aboriginal people are consulted and make the decisions. It cannot be clearer than that. The current 1972 Act granted more decision-making rights to the proponents, pastoralists, mining companies, agricultural groups. The laws have been changed to give rights to Aboriginal people. The new Act will finally provide procedural fairness and grant traditional owners the right to make the right decision for the right people. In an article published by the Kalgoorlie Miner over the weekend, again, the Honourable Neil Thompson was quoted as stating, "The public servant at the Kalgoorlie meeting was not able to answer all the questions that was put to him." On social media, the Honourable Member states the public servant was confounding the decision with partial arguments and partial information, and that he was ducking and weaving around the process and did not keep to the specific questions being asked. Again, I asked if the Honourable Member was at the same meeting that I was at. There was no ducking and weaving. The public servant who facilitated the Kalgoorlie session and so many other sessions was Cesar Rodriguez, the Director of Engagement and Policy for the Heritage Department of the DPLH. Yes, I took the time to know his name, not just a public servant. His name is Cesar Rodriguez. Cesar answered every single question that was asked of him, every single question. The information he provided at the session was not partial or ambiguous in any way. It was just clear information. I just want to end by saying a big thank you, or really want to really say to the DPLH staff who have worked very tirelessly to form and implement the new Act, and I have been proud to be part of the process along the way. I am in full support of the new Act, and I will continue to support its implementation.